Okay, so I'm about to start it. You should be live now.
Good afternoon and welcome to Season 2 of Power BI Lunch and Learn. My name is Alex Taylor. Today you've got some exciting episodes in store this season. We are travelling around the world for our world tour, so we will have speakers from the likes of Australia, Canada, America and India, and we will be you'll be experiencing lots of different tips and tricks across Power BI. Let me just go through my slides quickly before we start with our speakers. So quickly, a quick season review, season 1 review. During season 1, we covered topics such as data modeling, Power Query and M code, using parameters, field maps with COVID data, handling errors and exceptions, the world of bookmarks, April features review, advanced Power Query, the introduction to DAX and variables, editing interactions, not your normal interactions, and Ben did a random generator tool in Power BI to choose our Power BI pub quiz winner. So congratulations to our winners. The prizes will be out to you very, very soon. All the episodes from season 1 are now available on powerbisupport.co.uk. So take note of that. That is the website which you'll be able to find everything from Sheb, Ben and Lewis, and updates of our upcoming seminars and events and episodes, as well as some blogs the guys will be doing. So we did a survey for all the attendees from season 1. So we had some really positive results. So in terms of skills, 92% of people thought they did acquire new skills in the first season. 94.5% of people found our presenters friendly, and people rated the season as 74% as excellent and 21% as very good. So thank you very much for your feedback. It's much appreciated. And thank you for coming back for more installments of this Power BI Lunch and Learn series. Quickly just go through the bios of our trio of presenters. Lewis Holmes is one of our speakers, who's a Microsoft Stack BI contractor, over 10 years experience, and he's worked with various different large-scale organisations, the likes of Manchester Airport Group is one of them. Ben Howard, he's the most experienced of our three. He has 25 years consulting experience. He is a trader by trade in Power Project and Power BI, and he's spoken across the world on the world tour and various different project conferences, especially around Power BI. And Sheb, who is our producer, he's also a Microsoft certified solution expert in BI data analytics. He's a Power BI architect and also a Power BI trainer. Quickly, today's episode. Today we are doing our first stop on the world tour in India. So we've got our special guest, who is Sumit Gupta, who works for Nice Software in India. He will tell you all about his background experience, but he's talking about performance tuning in Power BI using the Performance Analyser tool. So he'll use the Performance Analyser tool in Power BI to show how to streamline queries. And then part 2, we've got Ben Howard, and Ben will be doing May's 2020 desktop update. So thank you very much for tuning in today, and we look forward to seeing you next episode. But without further ado, let's kick off today's episode. So I'll move over to Sheb, who will introduce Sumit.
Thank you very much, Alex. So yes, thank you for that introduction. Thanks to everyone for joining us on our world tour season. I guess just a bit of background around that. So why is it that we're going around the world? So we got a bit of traction in our first season from a lot of people around the world, and what I wanted, I guess, was to excuse me, understand how people in other countries apply Power BI, how they use Power BI. Do they use it in a different way than we use it here? Because it's interesting, working for a global company a few years back. They worked on the same data here in the UK and the data in Europe, for example. And even though they had the same data, same information, they were reporting on totally different KPIs, totally different trends, totally different analysis. So it's interesting to sort of see how people adopt Power BI, how they use Power BI within other countries. And I wanted to bring that experience. I wanted to know myself, and I also wanted to share that with you guys as well. So the first stop we've got is India. So we've got Sumit Gupta, who's got 17 years worth of experience in the sort of industry. He's a MicroStrategy expert, he's a Power BI expert, he's a business intelligence expert. He actually doesn't work for Nice Software, he owns Nice Software and owns and runs his own team of architects and developers in India. So without further ado, I'd just like to say hello to Sumit. Sumit, are you there?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Sheb. This is Sumit, everyone. Welcome to the session.
Hi, Sumit. Thanks for joining us. So first of all, I just wanted to find out exactly what time it is over there in India.
It's just a few minutes over 5 p.m.
Few minutes over 5 years. So that's proof that we are live, people. We are live with India right now. So how are things in India with Power BI? How is it that you guys? How is it sort of? Is it quite big? Are there other tools in India that are bigger than Power BI, or is Power BI the sort of biggest one in terms of BI tools?
A very good question. Is just that Power BI really is coming up to speed. Obviously, about a couple of years back, I would say other tools were probably leading the market, more like MicroStrategies and OBS and things like that. But then the last couple of years have seen a big change in the world of BI, and seriously, things are changing. Power BI being a Microsoft tool, many other, so many people who are working with different tools of Microsoft, and they're more aligned and used to
Yeah,
Microsoft tools. They actually find the transition to be more
yeah,
easy for the people who are getting into BI new, and
that's right.
not to mention it's quite intuitive. It's very easy to use. You can do big things without much of an
Well,
effort. Not to mention the price is quite cheap as compared to some of the other ones, and that's
yeah,
the reason why it's really spreading like wildfire in the market right now. So yeah.
great stuff. Okay, so if you'd like to share your screen, we can get started with your presentation,
Yep,
and
sure.
I guess show people how you exactly, stay in front of the competition, I guess, in terms of delivering Power BI solutions. So you're on screen now. So yes, please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Sheb. And, welcome once again to everybody, whoever's listening to me and watching my screen right now. This is Sumit, as you guys know, and today I'm going to be talking about performance tuning in Power BI. First of all, Power BI really is a pretty tuned application in itself. It really does a lot of things, and it's pretty tuned. You don't really get into a lot of challenge in terms of making the tool work fast. It's already quite tuned, but then there are still few tricks which, if you apply, things are going to be even faster. Things are going to be even performance improved. So some of you guys probably might just want to go ahead and try some of the things that I want to show you. So let me just quickly take you into the agenda that I have in my mind today. So, of course, performance tuning, I'm kind of breaking that into two different sections. One is the data level performance tuning, and the other one is the Power BI level performance tuning. Point number two is basically where I'm going to take you into certain demonstrations I'm going to show you as well. But then point number one is little introductory theoretical part, I would say. So data level common techniques are something which is not Power BI specific. Mostly, you can say that it's something which you apply and it's going to be working pretty nicely across any tool, whichever tool you use. But then in Power BI, if you really want to get more specific to the performance tuning and optimization techniques in Power BI, that's point number two where I'm going to be taking you. So let's just start with the common techniques. So here we go. Many other things you guys probably know it already because if you really belong to the world of business intelligence, many of these things might be known to you already. So it says taller and narrower tables are faster, which simply means I've got an example over here down below. So the point that I'm trying to make over here is that if you have way too many columns, like the example just shows four, that's not a problem really. But then typically if you have in your data warehouse like 30, 40 columns, that's like a very wide table. If you actually go ahead and make some way in which you can transpose the data in Power BI, you can do that. You can apply certain transformations to transpose the data. If you do it and then increase the number of rows and reduce the number of columns there, that makes it a taller and narrower table, which is always going to be performing much better. So here's a little example here. So I've got the sales cost and unit sold. These are the three different numeric columns here. So if you just go ahead and you don't really expect a data warehouse to have data designed in this fashion. You don't really expect that, but then you can probably get the data from the warehouse, which is in this form, transpose it in Power BI, and then construct it like this, where you've got all the column headers over here in the row headers, and then you've got the corresponding values over here. This makes the number of columns to be reduced. It increases the number of rows, but that is still going to be better in terms of the performance. And that's a first of the three common techniques that I'm going to be talking about. So try to use less number of columns, more number of rows. That's the idea. Then moving on, integers are faster than strings. Well, again, no points for guessing that. I'm sure you guys know that already. So here's one example again. If you have a table over here, which looks like this, right, where you've got the product name, just remember there's no key, there is no primary key, there is um, no column which identifies each row of your data uniquely using a number. You don't really have that kind of a column, a key column. If you have that situation, then if you really run a report based on this table, the one that looks like um, this one, then it is obviously going to end up doing a string comparison. And whenever you get into a string comparison for all these old database guys, I'm sure you guys might be raising your eyebrows saying that, hey, who does that? Well, definitely don't. You definitely don't want to do something like that, because it is going to be doing a string comparison, which is going to be performance wise much slower as compared to what it would be if you do this. Right? So if you just change that table a little bit and then apply this product ID, which is a key column, it's the primary key, then if you actually run the same report based on this table on the right, then it's not going to, it will avoid doing the string comparison simply because it already has a key which identifies unique rows of data. Right. So the moment it's also going to be very easy if you're going to go joining these tables with some other table. Maybe if you this table has a relationship with some other table maybe, so the joining is also going to be much faster, and then there's not going to be any string comparison happening in the report level at all. So integers obviously are always going to be faster than strings, is the point that I'm trying to make. That's the second technique. And then the third one is a little more towards Power BI. Oops, I skipped one more slide. Yeah, so this is the third one, where it says that if you really have slicers, you might be wondering what exactly are these boxes on the left. These are slicers. Okay, I've got as many as 6 slicers, and then this is the visualization on the page. And then whenever you make a selection from this slicer, it actually shows that particular selected value and applies that as a filter on your visualization, and then fetches the data and plots it over there. And not just that, when you make a selection on one slicer, all the other slicers are also going to get filtered. Which means what? If you really have way too many slicers, then every time you make a selection from one slicer, it is going to go ahead and do a complete table scan and select which data is to be shown on the other slicers. So many different tables, and every table is going through a full scan. Doesn't sound like a good idea, does it? And it actually isn't. So if you're using slicers, that's a fantastic thing to just go ahead and narrow down your area of analysis, do more focused analysis. That's what slicers are used for, which is a great tool. But then too many of those, well, not really a best idea, because every time you make a click, everything starts refreshing, every table starts getting scanned, and then populating the relevant data that you choose might just take a little extra few seconds. And when I'm saying that performance, you're tuning the performance, trying to improve the performance, it's a matter of few seconds. Okay, it's a Power BI. That's why I said it's pretty tuned application in itself. Even now, when I'm going to be getting into the next section, I'm going to show you how much time it really takes to perform a particular action. It's going to be noted down in the Performance Analyzer tool. You will see the difference. It's just a few milliseconds, so it's not a huge difference we are talking about. So these are the 3 common techniques, I would say. This one was a little too close to the Power BI. The other 2 are quite generic in nature. But if you do these things, obviously, it's going to be improving your performance and getting you a better reporting environment. Then, talking about the section number 2, which I would like to take you into, where I'm going to show you a demonstration as well in just a couple of slides next to this. Improving the speed of data load. So when you're actually going ahead and loading the data, or then putting it up into a report, there are certain nuances. I'm going to be showing you rather 3 scenarios, and I'm going to create a simple report, a grid report with just an item and a quantity sold, these 2 objects. But at the same time, I'm going to try and build that report thrice in 3 different ways, and we will try to monitor how much time it really takes to perform that or run that particular report. And you will see some of the ways are actually going to be faster than the others. So to notice how much time it takes, we will definitely go ahead and use the Performance Analyzer. And then these are the 3 scenarios that I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to be even demonstrating creating a report which requires joins, And all the database guys, again, you guys might be saying, okay, joins, not a good idea. It definitely has a negative impact on your report. Then creating an aggregated table using DEX function so that it does away with the join requirement. And then finally, we are going to be going ahead and importing the data from a SQL server using a query of my own rather than trying to do the aggregation using Power BI and doing the aggregation using Power BI in the tool. I'm rather going to be doing that, the join and aggregation at the database level and bring the aggregated data directly. So that's going to be the third scenario. All right. So this is a little screenshot of how the performance analyzer looks like. Obviously, every time you actually go ahead and make a click, it basically shows you the timings in milliseconds of this kind. So it's basically broken into data query, visual display, and other manipulations. So how much time these things took, it actually shows you the milliseconds of each. And I'm going to be using this particular tool to show you how much time each one of my scenarios take. Okay, so I'm not really talking about this too much. I would like to show you rather. I'll just go ahead and into the next slide, which is what I'm going to be showing you to construct an output like this. My final objective of all these three scenarios is going to be to go ahead and produce this output, where I'm going to go ahead. I'm sorry, going to go ahead and get the item name and total quantity measure. And the item name is basically going to be fetched from a table called as lookup item table. Okay, I've got a SQL Server database sitting in the back, which is going to have this table, and it has got 360 rows of data. Similarly, I'm going to get a measure created, which is called as total quantity, and that is going to be done on a table called as order details table. And as you can see, it has got more than 800,000 rows of data. The reason why I'm actually giving you all these details simply because just imagine if I actually get these two columns in one report, what's going to happen is that just to produce an output of 360 rows of data, the system will have to go ahead and scan these many rows of data, right? So that is going to be just to produce 360 rows of data is going to scan more than 800,000 rows of data. So which is obviously going to have certain impact on the performance. So what are the three scenarios in which we are going to be producing this output? These are the three scenarios. So the first one, which is going to be supposedly the slowest one, which is where this is a SQL Server database I've got right at the bottom. Okay, pardon my handwriting, it's not the best. So I'm going to be getting two tables imported into Power BI. And this is going to be the lookup item table and the order details table that I was talking about in the previous slide. And then from each one of these tables, I'm going to pick up one column each and put it into the report. All right, which means that over here, it surely is going to perform a join. Okay, that's my first scenario, supposedly the slowest one. Then in the second scenario, we're going to be building the same report output, but this time we are going to be getting the same two tables from the SQL Server database. But instead of picking up the columns from these individual tables, we are going to be creating another layer of abstraction, which is this in Power BI, which is going to be an aggregated table. It's going to be a consolidated table. It's going to pick up the data from both the tables, base tables, and create a third table of its own, and then the report is going to run on the third table, which is an aggregated table, which obviously is going to be a little faster than the first scenario. And then the third one, because it's not going to have the join anymore, this is all operating through a single table, no join needed. And then the third scenario is where I'm not going to be importing these two tables at all. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be using a query of my own to create an aggregated table directly in the SQL query and then fetch only the output of that query, which is going to be a single table, and then run that report based on that one table. In each one of these scenarios, I'm going to be creating that total quantity sold measure that's going to be common across all. The table is going to be common across all. The output that I'm going to be generating going to be common across all. I'm going to be every now and then when I run a new scenario, I'm going to be going ahead and deleting the cache. So let me just go ahead and take you into the demonstration. Okay. Right. And let me just load up Power BI as I'm doing it. Let me just talk about the fact that, scenario number 2 and 3, there are times when it can interchange. 2 is going to be, slower than 3. Ideally, theoretically, that's how it's supposed to happen. But then there are times when the scenario number 3 might actually appear like slower, and the 2 might appear, a little faster. That little interchange can happen simply because when you talk about performance optimization, like I did mention a couple of times, Power BI is quite an optimized tool itself. But when you go ahead and do certain manipulations, if the number of rows of data is not really huge, so sometimes even the scenario which is not the best one may also perform better. So, but theoretically, what I told you right now on the slides is exactly how it's supposed to happen. It's exactly, 9 out of 10 times the scenario number 2 is going to be slower than scenario number 3. 3 is going to be the fastest. So let's see how those things work. So quickly, I'm going to go ahead and click on SQL Server, and I'm going to put my server name, and I'll give the database name as well. And then I'm going to hit OK. Let's just wait for this thing to come up. OK, that's my database and all the tables. So I'm going to get the lookup item table, 360 rows, remember? That's my table. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up the order details table and just hit load. It's going to take a couple of seconds, so maybe a little more than that, to fetch all the data, and it's going to automatically detect a relationship between these two tables as Power BI does it on its own. The auto detect is pretty effective and accurate, and it has got an item ID column which is common in both. So let me just quickly go into the model view and check if the relationship is there, and it is there. Item ID, that's what's joining on. So I'll just go into the data view, and quickly what I'll go ahead do is in the order details table, here's my quantity sold, and I want to go ahead and create a simple measure, and the measure is going to be just summing up this column. So let me just do that real quick. I'm going to call this as total QTY, sum of quantity sold is basically what I want to do. And then I'm going to hit enter. Pretty simple measure, nothing complicated. Quickly, let's jump onto the report view, and I'm going to create a simple grid visual. So I'll just take this table, let me make it big. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and click on view and then click on performance analyzer. This is the tool which is going to be showing us how much time it's really taken. So it's going to, note down the time of every click that we are making. So I'm going to say start recording. You'll have to start the recording so that from that point onwards, whichever click you make, it starts recording it. So now it's recording. So I'll go into the lookup item table, and I'm going to pick up item name, and see it's going to show me how many milliseconds. And then I'm going to go ahead and pick up the quantity, total quantity measure that I just created. And then it says 259 milliseconds. So I'm just going to say stop recording. That's all I wanted. Here's my visualization that I wanted to create. OK, item and quantity sold, pretty simple. And then let's just go ahead and see how much time it really took. 259 milliseconds. I'm going to make a note of it if you don't mind, because I want to go ahead and make a comparison of these things. So I already got this Excel sheet. So I'm going to say 259 and OK, hope that's right. Yeah. So 259 milliseconds of time it took to produce this output. Let me just close this. Let me remove, that's scenario number 1. Let me just remove this measure also because I don't want to use it any furthermore. Okay, delete this. And I'm going to get into scenario number 2 now, where I'm going to create an abstraction layer. But before all that, first of all, I'll go into File, Options and Settings. And I'm going to go into Options and make sure I just click on Clear Cache, because I don't really want the cache, because every time you're executing a report, a cache is generated. So the next time it's obviously going to be faster. So I want my scenarios to be the contributing factor for the performance improvement, not really the cache. So I just want to clear that every time I start a new scenario. So in the second scenario, let me just quickly get into the data view, and I'll go into a home. And in home, I'm going to say new table, because I want to create an aggregated table. Remember, I'm going to call this as aggregated table, and I'm going to use the summarize function. I'm sure you guys must be aware of it. So the order details fact table is basically what I want to go ahead and aggregate. I want to group by the item ID, so it returns me only 360 rows of data, and I want the measure column to be called as let's say QT by sold. And then the aggregation function that I want to use is sum, quite obviously, in the order details table. And that's going to be the QT by sold. Close the bracket, hit enter. And that's going to return me a table. Okay, and that's going to have like two columns, item ID and quantity sold, 360 rows of data, which is fine, but the job is not done yet because if I want the item description, I don't really have that over here, so I'll have to look up that value as well so that this table becomes self-sufficient to run the report. I don't really have to go into any other table then. So I'll just quickly go into home, new column, and I'm going to call this as item description. And I'm going to use the lookup values function. And then I want to look up the item name from the lookup item table. This is what I want to pick up. And it's going to ask me for the common columns in both the tables, which is the item ID. And in my current table also, I have an item ID. So this is the one which is going to be used for the join. And there we go. I've got all the item description. And then finally, one last thing before we head back to the report is I'm just going to create that measure of summing up the quantity sold one more time like I did last time. So total, total quantity, and it's going to be a simple sum of quantity sold. That's that. So I've got this third table now, which is good enough to run the report on its own. So let's just head back to the report view, take the grid, and then one more time, I'm going to be enabling the performance analyzer. And let's just go ahead and see how much time this one takes. This is supposed to be a little faster. Okay, so I don't really need the other two tables anymore. I'm just going to take the item description from here, the aggregated table we created, and then I'm also going to take the total quantity from the same table, and then I'm going to say stop recording, you've done it enough. Right, now the same output, but now it says 223 milliseconds, which means if I go back to my Excel sheet, that's 223 milliseconds, obviously lesser than the first one. So let me put down the other ones as well. And that's the breakup. So you see, this one, scenario number 2, has been faster than the first one overall. Okay, so these were the two scenarios I wanted to show you. Let's just head back and I'm going to delete everything now. And I'm going to show you the last scenario. Okay, so let me just get rid of these tables as well. I don't really want to do any of that stuff that I've been doing so far in Power BI. I'm just going to simply write a SQL statement and bring the data from that SQL statement. And that's going to be the last scenario, which is supposedly going to be the fastest one. But like I said, it's possible that it might just, the second one might just appear to be a little faster, depending on the processor speed, depending on the amount of data. Power BI really can handle a lot of data. So if your data really isn't that large, these scenarios might not exactly impact the way the theory says. So first of all, let me just go into File and do this thing, clearing the cache, because it might have produced a cache again. Okay, it didn't. Okay, I'll just say hit OK. Now that's fine. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you this SQL statement. This I've already written it for you. So SQL Server, this time I'm going to be fetching the data from the same server, same database. But this time I'm going to go ahead and paste the SQL statement. So let me just talk about this a little bit. So I'm selecting the item name column and the sum of quantity sold column, and I'm going to put the quantity sold as, display that as quantity sold. And I'm going to get it from the lookup item table, and I'm going to make a join on the order details table using the item ID, which is the common column. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and do the grouping by the item name. So it's going to return me the item name and the numeric column, which is quantity sold, and that's all it's going to return from this particular SQL. So you see, the join is already implemented, the aggregation is already done, and the output is what's going to be imported into Power BI. So I'll hit OK quickly, and it should basically go ahead and show me this table, which is what I was expecting. Hit load, only 360 rows of data, let it load, and there we go. It's there. So if I just go into the data view, this is what it looks like. I'll quickly create that measure, which I've been doing as the common step. and then quickly go ahead and put it into the report. So that's that. Sum of the quantity sold column, and I will get into the grid view, and we need to go ahead and enable the performance analyzer, of course. And I'm once again going to say start recording, and it starts recording. Now from the single table, I'll just take the item name, and I'll also take the quantities sold. And then I'll say stop recording. So this time it says, again, same output. This time it says 182 milliseconds. So like I said, see, this one is the fastest. So it says 8 and then 69 and then 104. So you see, this is basically what I was trying to show you, that this one has turned out to be the fastest. This was a little slower than that, and this was the first scenario, which was the slowest of all. So the thing that we did differently was, on the first scenario, we actually let the join happen. The second scenario, we created an aggregated table, but we did that in Power BI using DAX. And then in the third example, we actually created the same aggregated table, but instead of doing it in Power BI, we did that in the SQL Server environment itself. So these were the three scenarios that I wanted to show you. And as we had talked about earlier, the third one comes out to be the fastest one. So, and that's pretty much it that I wanted to show you guys. You can apply that if you really like it. You can apply this in your own project, in your own report. If you have any further questions, you can actually reach out to me on that contact details, which is flashing on your screen right now. And I'll be more than happy to help you guys. So that's all from my side. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hand it over to Sheb again.
Thank you, Sumit. That was really insightful. Thank you for that. We've got a few questions, if you don't mind taking them. So in terms of the performance, so will the performance carry through to the Power BI service? So the performance that you're measuring, is that the same performance that you would see in the Power BI service once you publish it?
Yes, that is true. But then, yeah, there's going to be a certain amount of difference because there's going to be a web server involved in between. Architecturally, that's going to be a little different than working on desktop. So, the contributing factors may be a little different, but then overall, you do expect it to be pretty similar.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And do you think that the in-memory performance effects is affected once it goes into the service as well?
Not exactly. That's not going to be the case because ultimately the in-memory capabilities are there in the service account equally as much as it's there in the desktop. So the engine that's operating in the background, that's the X velocity engine, still kicks over.
Yeah.
And you don't really expect the service to be any slower. If at all, since there's a web server operating in the background, there are chances that it sometimes might just work a little faster.
Okay, brilliant. And in terms of the cache, you clear the cache on the desktop, but is there an option to clear the cache online, or is there a way to?
There is, yes,
to do that. Yeah.
There's an administrative panel in service account using which you can actually go ahead and clear the cache from there as well.
Okay, and is that something that needs to be set by more an admin rather than a user?
Yes, the administrative panel is basically not something which you will get access to unless you really have the administrative access. So that's where you can actually go ahead and manage your users and do a lot of the things which administrators generally do. So the managing cache, enabling, disabling, all these things are also a part of that panel.
Okay, brilliant. All right, thank you very much.
Sheb,
Ben,
before we carry on, I have a question for Sumit, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Under the performance analyzer, it gives you three figures: one's through the DAX, one visual, and one other. In the example you had then, the other category was the biggest, and I wondered if what was it doing in the other bit?
Okay, so the DAX query visualization, obviously that's pretty self-explanatory, but then every time you actually go ahead and request for a report and then something operates in the background, quite obviously there is some sort of SQL statement that's getting generated in the background to produce the report output that's being requested for. So there's an engine that's running which is doing all these operations. So the other basically is talking about, all these other operations to bring the data and structure it in the way you want it, and then produce it as the output at the visual layer. So that's what the others basically, there are quite a few components that goes into it. As a point of fact, if you actually go ahead and do a direct import, apart from these three, I would expect another component also to be appearing in the performance analyzer. That appears only if you do a direct import.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great. In terms of incremental loads, which method would you say is the most efficient for incremental loads?
So it all depends on what kind of data you're dealing with, because if you actually go ahead and see that your data, you have a data of 10 years, but then you know that it's only last 1 month's data is being changing, you don't really expect that all 5 or 10 years of data being changing. So you have to choose that maybe I want to load up all 10 years of data, but I want to refresh only last 1 month because that's all changing, I know. So that depends on how much data you expect to change, and you might want to keep a little bit of threshold on top of it, so that nothing really gets missed out. So if it's a really transactional data, you know that it's only 1 day's data. The moment the day is over, I don't really expect the previous day's data to even change. If it's that live, well, then you have to set it up in a different way versus some of the other ways in which your data is refreshing. It all depends on how much is changing.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And let's just have I think a couple of questions you can take yourself on the Q&A during Ben's presentation. So Ben, if you'd like to share with me your screen, then I can put you live. Ben is going to take us through some of the main features that were released in the May 2020 update. So I took you through the April ones in the season 1. Only a week later, the May was released, and we had a few more updates there as well. Some nice cool features. Won't be able to cover everything, but we'll cover some of the main ones that might affect us in our day-to-day use of Power BI. So I'll just take Ben from here, and Ben, I shall put you live now.
Brilliant. Oh, excuse me. Thanks, Sheb. Need a cup of tea. So brilliant. Thanks, Sumit. That was absolutely stunning. Appreciate that. Alas, it's left to me, not alas, of course, to wrap up for the next 20 minutes. Obviously, I'm not going to take you through the whole of the Power BI desktop in terms of the release, because that's already done by these guys. So you can go and watch it on Microsoft, of course, and it's always on YouTube. What I did do, though, is think, what's useful for us just as report developers at the front end. So certainly drill through is useful, and I'm going to take you through some drill through on some navigation pages, because I did a talk a couple of weeks ago about bookmarks, and this sort of stuff has come through and really replaced that. We will also have a quick chat about drops shadow support for visuals. I've got some specific thoughts on that, of course. Those of you who've watched my sessions on what makes a good presentation will understand that. And then if we've got some time, we'll kind of have a quick look at the decomposition tree, because that's generally available now, and there's some nice features on that. And just if we publish a report, we'll have a quick look at this as well. So that's all I wanted to cover off. Obviously, everything starts with a demo, of course, doesn't it? And so what I wanted to look at was the page navigation feature. So I thought I'd bring this one up because I've got this world population chart that you've seen before, or report, where I've got some bookmarks on there. So literally 4 bookmarks which take me through to different pages. So if I want to have a look at the why do these things never work? For top 10 or the bottom 10, we can do that. If I want to look at the data by percentage, then we can look at the world population by percentage. And of course, if I want to then kind of go back and have a look at everything just by population, we can do that as well. So these bookmarks, the issue with them, just from this demo perspective, is they take up too much space. So I'm going to get rid of them from here. And instead, I'm going to replace these 4 bookmarks with a direct page navigation to these pages at the bottom here: population, population percentage, fastest growing, slowest growing, etc. So how do I do that? Well, firstly, I can insert either a shape or an image or a text box or a button, doesn't really matter these days. I created my own image to do this. I've just got an image here called page, and so we'll put that image on this page. We'll just kind of resize that. So that's all okay. So what I want is for this button, which this is going to become, I want to have an action on that button. So the action is going to be page navigation. And in here you can see that I can choose the page that I want to go to. Okay, now you can see the pages as they're listed below here. That's not going to save me any more real estate. So what I can do is I can put a slicer next to this, and that slicer is going to contain the name of the page that we want to navigate to. And we're going to link that up together. So I'll just place the slicer there. Visually, I'm just going to, again, you always want to think about how people look at your pages, and is the data kind of linked together, or do those two buttons go together? And so I'm just going to, behind that, if I can grab that, Control C, Control V, I'm just going to take that grey bar and put that approximately over there. We'll resize that, and we'll have it about there, and I'm just going to take that to the back. Okay, so take that to the back again. Send that to the back. And so I've got, if we just minimize this, make this a bit smaller, these two visuals will be wrapped around basically by this grey bar. They'll be stuck together, if you like. They're not stuck together. Okay, so I need to put something in this slicer. What do I need to put into it? Well, actually the name of the page. So the easiest way to do that, or about the only way to do it, is actually to go and enter data directly into a grid or a new table. This is the easiest way. So I'll call this page name, and I'm going to have an order in here as well. This isn't necessary, but we'll do it. So the first page is called population. The second is called population %, and you have to type this correctly. The third is fastest growing, and the fourth is slowest growing. And I will just give these an order: 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll give this a name, and I'll call this page nav. So that creates a table for me, and that table slowly loads up. Okay, so with this filter selected, then we can go and put the page name in the filter. Okay, and you can see those here: fastest growing population, population percentage, slowest growing. Of course, this is where the order comes in. So if I click on page name here, we'll just order this by the actual order. So 1, 2, 3. So we should get population, population percentage, fastest and slowest growing. So that's all good. I'm just going to change this filter a little bit. So there's a couple of things we want to do on there. Firstly, I want to have a selection control. That's not a filter, that's a matrix. There we go. Let's get that as filter. That's better. So the selection control, I want that as a single select. And also we'll have that as a drop down, and so I can just resize that nicely, and we'll get rid of the slicer header. Okay, so we don't need to know the name. So that's good. So we've now got something where we can select the page. And now what I want to do, or I've got a slicer where I select the page. Now I want to link this page button up to that so we can navigate through. So clicking back on the page button, we've got an action, which we already said. This is page navigation. We don't want to select a destination, rather we want to conditionally put a formula against this. So I'll just click on the format by, and we have this, the UI appear. So we're going to choose a field value, and then what field are we going to base it on? Well, we're going to base it on the page navigation field, and the page name. Okay, and the summarization, because we're only selecting one thing from here, can be first. It doesn't really matter. So now what we should be able to do is, if I select fastest growing and then select page, then it should take us to the fastest growing, which it does. Okay, so that's pretty neat. Let's just go and check that out. Make sure we can go to the slowest growing, for example. Where did we put this on? Population percentage? Yeah. Okay, let's go to the slowest growing. Just make sure this works. Control click. Okay, so that works quite nicely. What I then typically would do is use another feature which was shown to us previously, where we can just control click and copy multiple visuals at once. So if I control copy those, control C, go over to the fastest growing, the slowest growing, control V. We can just paste those visuals in. I won't sync them. Didn't get the grey one in the background, but now we can again navigate around using this and go to the population. So it's a nice way of freeing up some of the real estate on our screens. Just get that, and we'll paste this one in. Okay, so that's quite useful because a lot of the time we do run out of real estate and we've had to do navigation before via bookmarks. Okay, so that's good. The other thing that I wanted to look at, given we've probably got some time, is a new feature called shadows. Okay, so we can put a shadow around a visual. So let me show you that. I'm just going to minimize this visual a little bit. And with that, we'll make this one approximately the same size. I like those little red lines coming in. That's good. Let's look at shadows then. So under formatting, we've got this new option called shadow. Okay, so shadow, as you can see, turns on a shadow. It kind of begins to make the visual stand out. So I'm in two minds about this as to whether this is sensibly a good thing or a bad thing, but it's there. I'm sure we'll find some great scenarios for it, one of which I may well show you if we've got time. So the shadow is on, and of course we should probably turn it on then for all of our visuals. And if I've turned a shadow on, I probably don't need a border, okay, because the shadow actually defines exactly where the visual is. So here I will turn that border off, and again that'll make it a little nicer. So again, you've got to think about, don't just switch everything on in Power BI, you'll have some problems. If we look at the shadow, then we've got a few options around that. As you'd expect, we've got a different color, so we could have that as a blue shadow, etc. We can choose whether the position is outside or inside. I've not quite worked that one out yet, I must admit. And then we've got some presets of where it can appear, so bottom right or top right, etc. You can see that shadow just moves around the visual. If we go and choose the custom option, then we've got lots of options around how big this shadow should be. So 3 pixels, 23 pixels, the blur, the angle that it's occurring at. So where's the sun coming primarily from, if you like, the distance of the visual away from the canvas, which again impacts how much shadow it has. So those are some of the things that you can play around with to really get your report looking the best way you want, if you like. Notice that the shadow, depending upon its transparency, will overwrite or not other visuals as well. So again, you need to be careful with what you're doing here. So that's shadows. Now, one of the things you can do with shadows as well, which is kind of more of an interesting thing, I think, is you can conditionally format how that shadow appears. So in this case, I'm just going to reset the shadow to default. Notice it's now switched off. I've got something here called the top 10 fastest growing countries by percentage. Let's just take this population one and I'm just going to duplicate that. We'll work on a duplication of the page, which is what I often do. And we'll get rid of this visualization and this visualization, and we'll copy in this vision. So we'll highlight that, Control C, not Control V, but Control C, and then over to here, Control V. Okay. We'll just make that a little bit bigger. We can get rid of the top 10 filter on this, and whilst we're cleansing this up, because I want this for all countries, we'll get rid of the title. We can get rid of the legend as well, and then in the data area we will just say the text size. We should be able to data labels. Let's just turn that on and off. There we go. So we get the population percentage growth, or if we scroll down, lack of growth for some of these specific countries. Okay, so we see Puerto Rico decreased in size by nearly 4%, and Bahrain increased by 5%. Okay, so let's go and have a look at that shadow again, which is switched on. Instead of just using the default color, we can put a formula against there. Okay, so we can format by a color scale, we can choose a fields value, or we can choose some rules. So this is just a pure example. What I'm going to say is that we'll look at the percentage difference, okay, which is the value that we're really looking at here. So that's a percentage change. Okay, notice the worldwide percentage change between 2018 and 2019. The population grew by about 1%. And typically countries want their populations to grow, but not by too much. So I'm going to say if we grow between 1 or 0 and 1, then we'll have that as some sort of green color. Okay, because that's good. Let's have a custom color. We'll choose that green. We'll add a new rule. We'll say if it's greater than 1 and less than 5 or 10, that's probably a warning to us. We might be growing too fast. And if we're greater than, say, -5, less than 0, then that's definitely a warning to us, because our population is shrinking, our country is shrinking, and we can't keep the economy going. So those were our 3 rules in this case. So between 0 and 1, we're looking for green. Between 1 and 5, amber. Between -5 and 0, red. Let's just click OK. Okay, so what have we got here? Well, we've got all of the countries selected, and my shadow is now amber because the percentage change across all of those countries is 1.8. So that was the 1.08. So that's conditional formatting based upon that. If we have a look at Afghanistan, let's have a look at that. Afghanistan's 2.34, so that's amber. Let's have a look at Croatia. I know Croatia is in this lowest level. That shrank, so that's the conditional formatting for that is red. So you can have a little play around with all of this little lot and see where we are. Argentina banging there, growing at 0.95%. So that's conditional formatting for you. If I went to publish this report, we'll just save the changes. And I'll show you the last thing before we wrap this up. We'll publish that to this workspace. Then, because I published this workspace before, it says, do you want to publish this report to the workspace before? It says, hey, do you want to replace this data set? And of course, the answer to that is yes, I do. And I've always done that. But what you now see is the impact of replacing this data set. Okay, so replacing this data set may impact 2 reports and 2 dashboards. And I can view the impact of this change on the content in the Power BI service by clicking here to view impact. This opens me up a new page, which you can get at via the Power BI service anyway. And then this talk about the decomposition tree, almost gives me the decomposition of, okay, here's the world population data set. Here's the 2 reports that it drives, and those 2 reports are driving 2 different dashboards. In fact, they're both just driven from this one dashboard. Okay, and we can see the impact by clicking on this button here across multiple workspaces. Okay, so that shows you if you're going to publish a report, it might impact 20 people or a number of viewers and a number of dashboards, etc. You can actually get visibility of that before you publish it to make sure that it's going to be okay. The last thing I'm going to show you, given that I have a few minutes left, is the decomposition tree. So the decomposition tree, which is here, has reached general availability, GA, or turned gold, as we used to say. And this is a decomposition tree around some planner tasks. So the issue that we had with the decomposition tree was that it wasn't very responsive, if you like. So if I had data that went across or higher than the screen or the vertical size of the visual, then I would lose it, and I wasn't able to scroll up and down. What Microsoft have done now is they've made this visual responsive, if you like. So I can see and I can scroll up and down now through the different areas of that decomposition tree. And let's just choose Andrew, because Andrew's the one that's got the most tasks, and we'll just then go and have a look at that by bucket name. Okay, so we can see that Andrew now has 4 completed tasks. If I click on Andrew and select Andrew and then scroll up and down, Andrew, the selected activity or selected resource, in this case the selected item on the decomposition tree, stays there, and everything else kind of scrolls around Andrew as I scroll up or down. So the decomposition tree is pretty cool like that. My issue with it still, though, is if we go here, okay, I can't scroll left or right. So I can scroll up or down here, but I can't then scroll to the next item in my decomposition tree. We have to make that a bit bigger. Okay, so that's the next feature that I'd like Microsoft to release, actually, to make this really responsive. All right, that's the end of demos from me. Probably best if I hand over to Sheb. See if we've got any questions. We can wrap this up.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, a lot of people will say that they haven't seen that before, so it's a nice, cool feature that you demonstrated there. So thanks for that in terms of the page navigation and the shadows. So that was taken well, and the rest of the questions we've dealt with. So we're good. Yeah, so thanks for everyone for joining the first session. We're coming to a close now as it's approaching 1:30. We'll be live again next week with another special guest, so please look out for our communications on that. Guys, if you'd like to just say goodbye to everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
And you back over to Alex to tail the session off. Thanks, everyone.
So thank you very much for attending today's session. Thank you very much to Sumit for being our guest presenter. We are looking forward to episode 2, which Sheb will announce more details of later this week. So please RSVP our meetup. And if you missed any of today's session, you can play back today's session via the same link. Have a great day, and thanks again to our speakers. Take care.